Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to make this video about a dream that my mother had that she shared with me yesterday. And it had me thinking, and I circled back with her and asked her for some clarification on this dream that she had. And so, what she told me in the text message was I was about 8 years old. She had a dream about me, her son. I was 8 years old, approximately at that age, and I was walking, and she was seeing me from behind, and she saw me fall. And then she said, I got back up and I turned around, and she said I was really bloody. I had blood in my nose, and kind of essentially what she said in the text message. So I thought about that for a while, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. 2025, and halfway through 2024, I went through a huge life change. I was a homeowner, had a beautiful house, pretty much my dream home, dream ranch, 4 acres in Wisconsin. And I loved it there. It was my peace, my solitude. And lost my job of 5 years there, May 20th, 2024. And what had happened after that was a huge transformation in my life, where I was faced with the choice to go out into the job market. And well, the area I was at in Wisconsin had really no jobs, very economically depressed area. It's essentially central Wisconsin, dead center. So not a lot of jobs, even if you're a farmer type of a person. I'm a marketing person, digital marketing, design, graphic design, and things like that. So during that period, I had met somebody, and she suggested that I start renting my house out. I had a 3-bedroom home there in Wisconsin, and it was down the street from several hospitals. So at the time, I said, okay, let me try something new. Let me not go and do the same thing, throw applications out there and see what I can get. And let me just do something different, because throughout my life, I've been through three recessions. This is number 4. We're at December 2nd, 2025. I called this recession out a while ago, but that's neither here nor there. I can talk about that some other time. But that was the recommendation from this person. And I said, okay, I'm going to try something new. And so I put that piece together, and I said, okay, what if I rent this house out to traveling medical professionals in the area that don't want to live in this economically depressed area, but want to come here, do contractual work, and then leave, but do so in a comfortable way and get that feel of a Wisconsin ranch. Get that experience, that authentic Wisconsin experience. Wake up in the cold mornings, seeing turkeys outside in your yard, deers all the time, things of that nature. So I did it. And simultaneously, I, 41 years old, said, I'm going to go back to school. I have 18 years of experience in marketing, digital marketing, anything you can think of, from websites to print ads to multi-channel marketing campaigns that include email to landing pages, social media, you name it. I've been doing this shit for a long time. So I've been doing it since the beginning. Ink on paper, pixels on a screen. That's what I do. So I said, I'm gonna I'm gonna go back to school and be this mid-career pivoter type person and go back to business school and get my MBA. However, what I'm going to do is live with my parents and complete this within a year, doing it full time. And I moved back in with my parents at 41 years old. And man, the hit that takes on your ego, man. After buying your own house, you know, so many other things, you know, before that, but just living a great life, making good money, doing what you love in an industry that you love. It takes a hit on the ego, man. So I moved back into the basement and I'm studying, and I got a 4.0. I graduated already. I graduated this past a few months ago, August, and I 4.0. I mean, perfect scores across the board from beginning to end. Got my MBA in a year. So, but through that time, I went through a hard ass breakup. I mean, if you ever felt like someone was just ripping and stomping on your heart, someone that you loved, who had alcohol issues, who had sexual addiction issues, who could not show you that they loved you or express any kind of emotion towards you, but just treated you essentially like dog shit. If you ever had that, and then lost that through really no fault of your own, except for you looking in the mirror and saying you deserve better, and having that person essentially celebrating the fact that this is over and so on and so forth and whatever. It's tough. That's a deep wound. And it kind of goes back to this dream, right? And there's more to that, but I'm going to tie this back to the dream right away. When I probed her on it, it's 2025 is the year of the snake. And the snake represents transformation, the shedding of the old skin and coming into new. So I asked my mother, I said, hey, how much skin did I have on my body when you saw me? Was it mostly blood or mostly skin? And she was just like, oh, wow, such a crazy question and blah, 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 and kind of laughing it off and stuff like that. And then she said, you had skin. She kind of goes like that. Like, don't be ridiculous. That's her kind of my attitude. I said, no, just, was it a lot of skin? Was it mostly blood? What was it? And she said, no, it was just like the cuts were really deep. And I was like, okay. And then she said, and you fell into a hole, and it was like a small hole. And I'm like, yeah, it was a grave. She saw me walk into a grave, but she just doesn't want to say that because she's my mother, and she, doesn't really want to think or say these kinds of things and so on and so forth. So I was like, that says a lot. I said that is a death and rebirth story. And I'm thinking about that dream and how, like, that end of that relationship, and even like the close up to the end of that relationship as it was ending, like the treatment that I was putting up with or the sacrifices I was making, it was like it was like I was repeating these old generational wounds that I saw people in my family making, the sacrifices that they've made for other people to only then go around and treat them like dog shit. And I was doing that thing too. And, I was telling this person, hey, you got a drinking problem and so on and so on. I wasn't really saying that, but it was very clear that this motherfucker has a drinking problem, period. End of fucking goddamn story. I don't give a fuck. You got a drinking problem, you got a drinking problem. No one's got to tell you that shit. But I said the drinking is what is, causing issues in the relationship. So I said, I'll tell you what, you want to blame me that my drinking is the problem. Okay. I'll quit the drinking. I'll make the sacrifice to make this work for you. And so I did. Did it change anything? No, it didn't actually. At the end of the day, it didn't. Not even a bit. The behavior still continued. It wasn't maybe as bad as far as my reaction to it, but horrible. So it's like those are deep wounds, right? In my mother's dream, those wounds were deep. Another thing that happened as far as me losing my house, yet another wound, was me living in that basement, living with your parents. When you're 41 years old, you start to learn a lot about things that happened as you were growing up and how your parents haven't grown at all. They haven't changed. And for what it's worth, they could, they were young when they had me and so on and so forth. But at some point in time in everyone's life, you actually do have to grow up. And that's not meaning in age. That's meaning in mindset. That's meaning in passions in your life. That's meaning in what you spend your time, energy, and attention towards. That's the legacy that you leave behind. I'm not talking about kids. I'm not talking about that type of shit or properties or whatever. I'm talking about the impact you leave in this universe throughout time on others. And you think about that and the impact that people before us have made throughout time without technology, and how that has traversed time and will continue to do so. It's incredible. But so, and I'm looking and living there, and I'm seeing my father. And I'm seeing my father basically sacrificing his entire life for his wife's comfort. She wants to paint this wall. She wants to do that. She wants to do this. And he's just there supporting and watching the chaos unfold. No say in what happens. No say in the matter whatsoever. It's just rolling through life, following her emotional whims, if you will, lack of a better word, or emotional whirlwind. And I saw that and I made that connection, and I said, man, the sacrifices I was making for this person that was kind of walking all over me, and I'm not saying that my mother was walking all over my dad, it's just who she is. But those things, I was kind of putting her on that pedestal, if you want to call it that, ahead of myself. And I saw a man doing that his whole life, never really having some kind of a purpose beyond her. And from what I've learned, since I would say 2019, was that it's really unhealthy for anyone, let alone a man, to have a purpose that is only a woman in their life. And so that had me really grinding at school. That had me really focusing at school. But that wound was there. And one of those things that I found as I was looking for purpose in life and how to be a better man and how to be a man and not just a fucking emotional fucking tampon, right? Not just a fucking dildo walking around pleasing your woman. I started doing a lot of things, doing a lot of outdoor things, learning how to shoot, learning about guy shit, And so I bought a few guns while I was living out in Wisconsin. Started learning how to shoot them, started learning how to clean them, started having an appreciation for those types of things. And so when I moved back, I brought them with me. Of course, I locked them up. I had locks on locks through the magazine kind of chamber, and then locks over the triggers for each one. And one day he found them, and it was like I was a kid again. Because I'm the oldest child, so anytime that, I went through my teenage years and did my thing, smoked my first cigarette, smoked my first joint, drank my first drink, I be getting clobbered over that shit. I've been slapped, pushed down, spit in my face, went through it, man. Just being a teenager, just doing what normal teenagers do, but I was the oldest child. Wounds, deep wounds, just like in that dream. And so when he once again discovered something he doesn't necessarily agree with that I was into, that I was finding purpose in, other than running around like a simp after my woman, he wanted them gone. And I told him, I said, I'm going to keep these things, and they're locked up, and it's all safe and what have you. And if I can't keep them, then I'm going to leave. Nowhere to go. Except a property in Wisconsin. I would just have to sleep in my car in the fucking woods or whatever, because I had like 4 acres out there or whatnot. I'd just park my car and sleep in it. I don't remember what month it was, but it's always cold over there. So, and I was traveling back and forth from Illinois to Wisconsin at that time, because that's where they lived. And so I said, I'm gonna need an answer to this, like within 24 hours, because I'm not gonna sit here and be waiting for you to make a decision or whatever. I just want a decision made now. And he said, give me some time. So he was going through some growth period too at the same time while all this was going on, I guess. Starting to have his mind shift a little bit or whatever. I saw a little bit of, with age, you start to be a little more malleable. Because time brings wisdom, and because, the world breaks you down, whittles you down, and shapes you in different ways in time. So eventually came back and he said no. So he stood his ground. He said no. And I said, well, in this moment of just like kind of inner rage, basically, I didn't go off or anything, but I felt that inside, that rage, because I saw that rage growing up. So I packed up all my shit, put in my car, and got the guns and everything. And I was like, okay. And I started driving. And then I think about that, and I left home when I was like 17. I moved out at 17. And I started down the road, and I was on the highway there about 20 minutes maybe-ish into my drive. And I thought to myself, I was real upset. And I always ran. And I was always, getting all of the discipline. My brother and sister hardly ever fucking disciplined. I've never seen it. I don't believe it ever happened. I got it all. And something inside me said, don't do the same thing you've been doing all the time over and over again. Turn around. And then I was thinking like, yeah, like your dad loves you, and he's just a stubborn person. And that's just who he is, and maybe he just won't ever change. But you don't have to be that stubborn person. You don't have to repeat that cycle over and over again, generation through the generations. You can be the one to take that licking and keep on fucking ticking. And stop running. It kind of ties into that relationship I had, that last one, where she was a runner. She would run. And I think, how did that make me feel when she ran? Made me feel abandoned. Made me feel like I'm just trying to protect you. And the more I try to protect you, the more you run. And I saw myself and my dad that day. I saw his pain. I felt his pain, actually. Me running away from him, because he was trying to protect me. Whether it be from myself, whether it be from guns, whatever. That's what he was trying to do. Whether it was right or wrong, it doesn't fucking matter. So, I went back, and I said sorry. And I gave him a hug. And that really, yeah, man, I just get emotional even thinking about it, because it never happened. And I saw myself in him. He's always living for other people. He's never really lived for himself. And that's what I was doing. And And that's what I was trying to break. That's the cycle I was trying to break. And this was part of it. So back to that dream, those were deep wounds. Um, Wounds that were projected onto me growing up as a kid. Because again, I was like 8 years old in her dream. Wounds that were projected onto me as a kid that I didn't fully understand at the time. And in her dream, I fell into that pit. And like I said, I was living in her basement through school. And, but she said I climbed out. And then all those wounds were exposed. And I'm always the kind of person that's going to, it's just naturally like this, but I want to say stuff that makes the situation better. Or just, that's kind of how I see things now. It's not like I'm trying to do it, but in that dream, all of those wounds were exposed and they were really deep. And I thanked her for sharing the dream with me. And I said, well, thank you for sharing that dream with me, because this confirmation that I got out of it. And she said, you picked yourself out of it. You picked yourself up out of it. And I got out of it. And those wounds were deep. And I said, now is the healing season. And towards the end of this, the term in school, I ended up moving out to Vegas. And, I was just happy to get out of that basement. I was happy to get out of that pit, And coming out here, I faced a lot of old wounds as well, especially the one about women. And there's still a lot to process about that, but out here I'm able to look and kind of process what I went through. And losing a lot of relationships while I was living in that basement, family relationships, and just cutting family members off. And maybe I can get that into another day, but there's a lot of shit that happened at that time. And leaving my mom and dad behind, and they got a lot of growing up to do, which is kind of fucked up to think and say, but time is a weird ass thing, and life is a weird thing, and you don't get wisdom from age. You don't get wisdom from time you spent on this planet. You get wisdom from lessons you've learned and lessons you've internalized and adjustments you've made based on those lessons that you've learned. You can also get wisdom from others, seeing those things that those other people have gone through and internalizing those lessons and moving forward and growing and understanding, wait, I'm full of shit, or my friends are full of shit, or whatever. They don't know what the fuck is actually going on, because I've seen this motherfucker go through this types of shit and grew in this types of ways. But that's where wisdom truly comes from. And, it is possible for young people to be wiser than their parents. And I told my mother, I said, dreams are incredibly symbolic. They're not literal. This dream is not, I told her on the phone, I said that the dream's not really telling you that I'm out here in Las Vegas doing dangerous shit and I'm about to die. That's not what the dream is telling you. He said, the dream is and then I said, you have anxiety, and that's a true thing that's gone through my family lineage. That's another thing, that ancestral thing that we've had. You're projecting your anxiety on me. Your fears, just like my father, and when I come home, stoned or whatever, or smoke a cigarette, all of his fears and all of the shit that he probably did and gotten into and almost, crashed out and this, that, and the other fucking thing that I don't really know about. But all of his fears and anxieties were projected onto me, and that's why he'd be whooping my ass all the fucking time. She's doing the same fucking shit to me with this dream interpretation of hers. So, and I told her that. I said, well, you're projecting onto me all of your anxieties. We know we have this anxiety, and it's one thing to recognize that you have anxiety in your family. It's another thing to actually recognize it and then say, okay, I need to make something positive out of this anxiety that I'm feeling. I'm not going to whoop my kid's ass because I'm afraid that he's going to, smoke some fucking weed or whatever, or, accidentally shoot himself with a gun because he's an idiot. Okay. So it's the same kind of thing. And so I told her that. I said, you're projecting your anxieties on me. I said, dreams are very highly symbolic. And that's kind of where I ended that phone conversation. Then I circled back with her, asking her for some clarification about the skin aspect of her dream. And then she gave me details of what I fell into and the details of that. And then I interpreted the dream further in regard to, yes, that is a death and a transformation dream. But it's also the fact that I climbed myself out of it. And then I had these deep wounds during that death period. Deep ancestral wounds had come to the surface, which is why you could see them in your dream. And they were deep emotional wounds that had to do with what I think, my self-sacrificial approach to relationships, to deny the reality that I know is a reality when another person has fucking issues, but that I love, that I'm willing to sacrifice myself and entertain the bullshit that they're feeding me, that I'm the problem, and my willingness to even go through the process of trying to show them that I'm not the problem by letting them continue to be the fucking problem. All of those wounds that came out, I told her that I climbed out of that hole in her dream. And she saw those wounds in her dream. And those wounds were deep in her dream. And the fact of the matter is I didn't stay dead in that dream. I climbed out of it and I came back to life, and I was alive. I wasn't dead. And wounds heal. And wounds heal stronger than they are before they, wounds callous. And a callus is basically like when you cut yourself, like I've cut myself a bunch of times, your skin comes back and it heals. Your body heals itself, and the skin comes back stronger. Like I cut myself really deep here on glass or something like that, and it's healed, and it was big, and I can't. My nerve endings are dead there, so I can't feel it. So all of the feeling and the pain from those deep wounds, the pain will be gone. And the skin, the protective layer over those wounds, will be stronger, harder, and not feel that pain any longer. And in reality, that's a thing. In her dream, that's a thing. She saw me come out of it with the wounds fresh, but they will heal. And I told her, this is the healing period. We are coming out of the year of the snake in 2025. Today being December 2nd, 2025. And this was a year of transformation for a lot of people. Everybody. I'm not even going to say a lot of people. No one escaped this year of transformation. Nobody. And you can look back on it and feel sorry for yourself, or you can look back on it and say, and actually not even say, because saying is worthless. You could look back on it and see yourself crawling out of a grave and exposing your wounds to the rest of the world. Because moving forward, the rest of the world is going to see those wounds heal, and the rest of the world is going to see how motherfucking strong you are after obtaining those wounds and finding that inner strength to climb out of that pit that you were in with those wounds still lacerating your fucking body. Well, God bless you all, and you have a wonderful day.